Kingdom Come is known as one of the best comic books in existence. This tells us the story of a harsher, grittier future with no hope, as they have lost their Superman. Welcome to the Comicstorian Full Story channel, where we take old and new full stories from Comicstorian and put them here to give you a better viewing experience. Today is the story of the alternate DC Comics future known as Kingdom Come, written by Mark Waid and art by Alex Ross. I hope you enjoy.
Wesley speaks of the apocalypse, of the eagle fighting against a bat, of 7 voices of thunder calling out to the woe of mankind. It's in the Revelation of St. John, all of it. I can go on, but there's more, he says to Norman as the pastor leans back in his chair, watching his friend continue to gasp for breath in his hospital bed. Nightmares, Wesley. You've had them before, but that's why you're here, Norman tells him. But Wesley knows that they aren't just dreams. These are visions. Visions of the future. He struggles from bed. The sands run out, and I can do nothing but wait in my own filth for sleep to finally claim me. Someone must act, he says, but the nurse rushes in, pushing Wesley down into his bed. Norman wants to help his friend, but can do nothing but read from the scripture. The world has changed into a different place outside the window, as metahumans fly through the night sky. Wesley died shortly after that, but Norman went to the funeral, and there were a few more people that knew Wesley in his twilight years. Once he had been known as the Sandman, and he fought alongside other heroes of the past. But as Norman wanders through a world overrun with metahuman fighting, he remembers that Wesley would often lament about the past, remembering a time when superheroes helped mankind to better themselves. He mocked their worth, these newcomers, and spoke instead of the legends of the past. Norman thinks as he walks through the city, finally arriving at the restaurant Planet Krypton. But it too is just as gaudy as the reimagining of the past, of waiters and waitresses dressed as superheroes that no longer exist. Norman can't force himself to eat, and so he continues to wander. But a bus suddenly sails through the air as he walks down the street. People turning in alarm as the metahumans continue to fight, throwing each other through the walls and laughing about the destruction that they're causing. An explosion tears apart a building and Norman rushes forward, pushing a young girl out of the way as the rubble tumbles down upon them. These people are protectors, but they don't care about protecting anyone, Norman tells himself. But as he struggles to his feet, the heroes stop. Everyone turns to the large TV alongside the building, watching as the newscaster delivers the tragedy of the world. It was the next day that Norman preached to his small congregation. But he didn't have words of peace and comfort. He instead had words of fire and brimstone. He looks over at his church and sees the fear in their eyes, and he stumbles over his words. This isn't what I wanted. Forgive me, he says quietly. But after they've left, he sits alone in the pews, staring at his Bible. And he doesn't see the pages for a minute. He instead sees the image of a fallen angel, smoke curling around him as he sees Wesley's visions. And he reaches down, beginning to tear the pages out of his Bible. He crumples them up, throwing them to the floor. And as he looks up, he's suddenly bathed in light as an angel passes through the wall, his skin growing a pale white, his body draped in a green cloak. The Spectre lands before the man of God. I have need for you, Norman McKay, the ghostly hero says, and Norman believes that he is going mad. But the Spectre tells him that his sanity might be mankind's only hope. A higher power has charged me with the task of punishing those responsible for the coming evil. Long ago, I would have judged you swiftly, with clarity, but my facilities are not what they once were. In order to carry out the task, I must anchor myself to a human soul who seeks justice, the Spectre tells him. But I don't, Norman begins, but his words are cut off as the Spectre turns a deadly gaze upon him. You will, he rumbles. The Spectre reaches out, taking Norman's hand, and the world seems to shift around them as a swirling mist envelops them. In moments they are standing in a vast field of wheat. What do you see? The Spectre asks of his human companion. I see a Midwestern farmland, but that's not possible, Norman says, his words whispering as he sees the farmer standing on the roof of his barn. There's no need to lower your voice. We cannot be seen or heard, not even by him. the Spectre says as they watch Kal-El work. They watch as he lifts a tractor over his head, and Norman remembers the man that came from another world. You know him by a name that he has not used in 10 years, not since he began his self-imposed exile. Spectre says, and Norman is saddened that the man seems so alone. But as they watch, he's approached by an Amazonian. Hello, Clark. And Cal just looks at her until she uses his true name. Diana, I haven't seen you in months. What brings you to the farm? He finally asks, but she explains that she was hoping that he wouldn't still be here, that she knows that he misses his family. I have work to do here, Diana. Things to grow, Cal says as he stands and walks away. But Diana touches the side of the wall and the simulation wavers, revealing that they are actually standing within a chamber in the Fortress of Solitude. You're spooking the animals, Cal tells her as she reactivates the simulation. Cal, he's out of control, Diana finally tells him, and Cal looks at her for a moment. I tried to tell you that 10 years ago. I'm not interested, Cal tells her as he leaves the chamber. They walk through the Fortress of Solitude, and Diana asks him merely to see for himself what has happened. He finally relents and enters another chamber, activating his computers and watching the horrors of the world, of the destruction that has torn apart Kansas. Magog, he whispers, watching as the hero Magog leads a team of powerful heroes against the decrepit parasite, who manages to reach out and rip open Captain Atom. The nuclear blast nearly wiped Kansas off the map, destroying enough crops to threaten the world with global famine. He turns off the computer, stepping out of the chamber. Cal, please, our generation takes its lead from you. We always have. You must face this. If you don't, neither will the rest of us, and it just goes on, Diana tells him, but Cal shakes his head, returning to his farm. There's nothing I can do. Go back to your island, Diana. You're safe there. The world shifts again, and Norman and Spectre float amongst the clouds, watching as Wonder Woman flies away. And Norman just turns to his ghostly friend, asking what about the others that she spoke of. Spectre holds out his hand, pulling back the curtain of the world to show Norman what he asks. Keystone City has become a bastion of safety, protected by a hero that moves at super speed, continuing a lonely vigil of his city as he moves between the beats of a second. In the Pacific Northwest, those who threaten the very lifeblood of the Earth itself are attacked by Hawkman. In the vastness of space, an Emerald Warrior continues his vigil of the stars, prepared to protect the Earth from alien threat. Others have returned to the deep oceans to watch over their kingdoms, and in the far-flung future, they seem to be dealing with a different set of problems. Norman looks at Spectre. What of those who weren't gods? I seem to remember another, one who made his home in Gotham City. What has become of Batman? Norman asks. The image swirls to the urban sprawl of Gotham, where criminals are thwarted by bat machines. Batman has his city under control, the Spectre simply says. The image shifts again, and the pair stand upon a bridge, watching as innocent people run in fear as groups of heroes continue to fight. Bullets ricochet, hitting vehicles and snapping a cable of a nearby trolley, sending that trolley tumbling down into the waters below. Norman motions to all of the carnage around them, questioning why the Spectre would show him this. Why wouldn't he act as an angel of mercy and help the people? Don't you understand? If any of us are to survive this, we need hope, he says to the former hero. Then there's a red and blue blur, a gust of wind and speed that stops the heroes and saves everyone, and those who watch are stunned as they look into the sky. Look! Up in the sky! They say in hushed tones, and above them he floats, holding those that would harm them, saving them. Superman has returned! Norman smiles, believing the end has been averted. But his visions return, and he sees the fallen angel who shouts at the sky in anger that he is none other than the last son of Krypton. The threat of Armageddon hasn't ended, it has only just begun. His vision clouds swirls around him, and the world shifts once again. Where have you taken me? I no longer have any sense of time or place, Norman asks of his new friend, and they look at the Statue of Liberty, where a group of heroes known as the Minutemen are attacking inbound immigrants, claiming that America is full and no longer has room for them. But the Americommandos appear, prepared to fight against the other heroes for the right to defend America. The crowds duck and scream in fear as the battle begins, and Norman looks at the heroes in disgust. These aren't heroes, they're madmen! They're ready to battle over territory without bothering to care who's caught between them. Somebody has to do something! The Spectre looks into the sky. Indeed, he says simply, and above them, the Justice League now descends, led by Superman. The heroes quickly move into conflict, stopping the so-called heroes while saving everyone in the process. Green Lantern and the Flash smile, glad to be back to doing what they love, saving people. And inside of the Statue of Liberty, the Brain Trust is angered. They are unable to continue their control of the heroes, but they are unaware of the dark detective that stalks them from behind. Red Robin throws his Robin-a-rang, knocking them out. The Justice League takes to the skies with the fight contained, heading towards the UN building. The reporters quickly gather as Superman steps forward, his group of friends at his back, ready for his orders. And he looks at those gathered. He expresses his apologies for stepping away, for letting the world become what it has become. He promises that they will take this new generation under their command, to instruct them and guide them to become proper heroes. We will make things right, he tells them. The reporters have questions. Oh boy, do they have questions. Where has the League been? Why did they let it get this bad? They ask if the League will use force to stop the heroes who refuse to fall in line. Superman, are you truly prepared to confront Magog in light of what has gone on before? One reporter asks, and Superman has no answer. But Wonder Woman steps forward, promising that Magog will be dealt with if he should surface. Norman and the Spectre watch as the images shift again. Now, they stand in the ruins of a house as Superman appears. He floats down into the cave below. Bruce, I know you're down here. You can't hide from me, Superman calls out. Batman chuckles from his place in front of the Bat computer. I bow to your superior wisdom, Batman calls, continuing to work away. He orders the Batbots to sweep the city to keep the criminals in line, and Superman expresses his desires for Bruce to rejoin the League. The League needs you, Superman says. I'm busy. Batman grunts, and he points out that Dick has rejoined them. You got him to reclaim the Robin mantle. Is that supposed to sway me? He and I never did see completely eye to eye. Batman grunts, still working at his computer, and Superman turns his gaze throughout the cave as Batman explains that the problem isn't a new one, that he is working on it with his friends, and he'll be doing what he can to help mankind. Goodbye, Clark, he finally says. After he leaves, Oliver Queen, Diana Prince, and Ted Kord step out of the shadows. He knew that we were here. I could feel his x-rays. I'm probably sterile now, Oliver Queen jokes, and Batman calls them over. In time, the League will do some serious damage. If they're allowed to enter into our arena, the world is doomed. Superman has no idea what he's really up against. Fortunately, we have our own team to call into play. Batman presses a button, bringing up the images of the team's roster. But time shifts again, and Norman watches as the Justice League begins to work, fighting against those loose cannons of the metahuman world, bringing them in as recruits when they can, fighting against those who won't listen, but there are others working behind the scenes. He watches as they appear in the boardroom, where Lex Luthor has gathered some of the greatest villains of the world, bringing them together to form the Mankind Liberation Front, which he's using to make the situation worse, knowing that mankind will have no choice but to stand up and fight back when they're pushed too far. In the meantime, we have nothing to fear from the League? Baron Naga asks, pointing out Superman. He will not touch me. He will not. Lex shouts out in anger, but he calms himself, looking up and smiling at his attendant, a man with a marvelous smile. He cannot. I've got the most marvelous anti-Superman plan. Isn't that right, boy? Lex asks. Shazam smiles. Absolutely, Mr. Luthor. The Spectre turns to lead Norman away, but Norman asks who. The Captain of Lightning and Thunder. Come, we spent too much time wallowing in sin. Spectre tells him in response to who is Shazam. The world shifts yet again. The pair standing in a crowded metahuman bar, a place where the young and superpowered can wallow in their vices. But the crowd goes silent as Superman walks in. He glares at the bar. His vision burns, destroying the bottles of liquor. This doesn't help. Party's over. He tells those that have gathered, and he looks around at them. I'm here because the world's in a bad shape. We have a lot to do and not a lot of time to do it. I want you to join the League willingly, he tells them, but he explains to them that there are rules, that they will be expected to conduct themselves in a certain manner. Those of you who take up with us willingly will be expected to be as responsible as you are powerful. Those who don't will be dealt with, he tells them as he turns to walk out of the bar. Our job is thankless. We do what has to be done. Right now, we're humanity's only hope. Be heroes. He tells them, leaving, and the crowd begins to murmur and talk amongst themselves, but an arrow slams into the wall, and everyone looks up to see Green Arrow leaning on the bar. Hey, you guys heard Big Blue's pitch. Now for the Democratic response. Time shifts again as Norman is watching the Justice League take their mission global, fighting against the metahuman population around the world, but as time goes on, they fight more than they recruit. Superman tells Wonder Woman that he isn't sure what to do with those that won't fall in line, but the Amazon princess has an idea. Norman watches as the pair head off to Atlantis, where they speak with the king, Arthur Curry, the former Aquaman. Though he is sympathetic to their mission, he won't allow them to build a prison beneath the ocean. It's not as if we're unused to being burdened with the surface world's refuse, but I just won't allow it. I have enough to worry about than dealing with your meta-human problem. You, princess, surely understand how uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, he says, putting his hand on Diana's shoulder, and she bows her head, explaining that she has been stripped of her royalty and heritage. I am no longer welcome on Paradise Island, she says quietly, shocking both Superman and Arthur. Arthur apologizes, but his mind is already made up. Wonder Woman and Superman turn to leave. Then resume your solitude, Arthur. Relish your world, for so long as it lasts, she tells Arthur as they walk away. Over on Alan Scott's Emerald Palace in space, Superman and Wonder Woman discuss what happened to her, and she explains that the Amazons declared that she has failed her mission to bring peace to mankind. But they're suddenly interrupted as Donna Troy and Roy Harper walk in, telling them both that Magog's location has been discovered. Norman watches as the world shifts again, and now they're standing in a blighted Kansas. The hero known as Magog is trying to place a destroyed home gently back in its foundation, but the building falls apart and he blasts it out of anger. He looks up as the Justice League approaches. What are you doing back in Kansas, Magog? Magog grins at him. Well, look at who it is. The Metropolis Milquetoast. I never left, Big Blue. Superman shakes his head, shocked that Magog would lead a powerhouse team against the parasite, and how much damage and death it caused. What are you going on about? Go ahead, take a swing, punish me! Try to lock me away. If you've got the guts. You've got a lot of nerve blaming me. This was your fault. This surprises Superman, and he tells him that all those years ago, after the Joker wiped out the Daily Planet and killed 100 men and 1 woman, that Magog had no choice but to finally put the Joker down. Of course, Superman put Magog in jail, but the fact is that the world agreed with the murderous hero and they turned on Superman. They told him that he couldn't get with the times, that he couldn't evolve into the hero that the world needed. That they wanted Magog, they wanted the hero to kill villains. So Superman went away. I never got a piece of you and now you're here right where I want you, Magog says, readying his weapon. The Justice League moves to help, but Wonder Woman holds them back. Magog looks around at the destruction that surrounds them. Why did you take off? I always thought you were afraid of me, but that wasn't it. You were afraid that I was the man of tomorrow. You were afraid of the future that I represented, Magog says, motioning to the blighted land around them. Well, look around you! This is what I represent! Superman almost smiles. You must be very proud. Magog bellows in rage, whirling on him, blasting him with an energy spear. Everyone looks in shock as the smoke clears and Superman stands unhurt as Magog falls to his knees. Your fault. You bastard. The world changed, but you wouldn't, so they chose me. Now they're dead. 1,000,000 ghosts. Punish me, lock me away, make the ghosts go away. Wonder Woman puts her hand on Superman's shoulder. We're at war, he tells her. Over at the MLF board, Lex Luthor looks at his gathered villains, introducing them to the group's newest member. The Batman, he says as Bruce steps into the boardroom with his own allies. This must be killing you, Lex says with a smile as he shakes Bruce Wayne's hand and Bruce smiles back. Given the circumstances, what choice do I have than to throw in with Lex Luthor? Time folding over and over, and the pair are now looking at the gulag that the Justice League has built on the remains of Kansas. A place where those who refuse to fall into line can be taught how to properly serve the world under the watchful eye of Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. but the place is a powder keg with some of the most powerful metahumans unhappy with being imprisoned, believing that Superman just doesn't understand how the world works now. Lex has his own eyes within the prison, seeing how the tension is rising, and he shows this to Shazam. Norman looks at the handsome man, the man by Luthor's side. You called him the Captain of Lightning, Shazam? He asks, and the Spectre nods. Yes, his role in this war remains a mystery. The Angel admits as the world swirls around once more. Kal-El and Dinah are sitting outside of the Justice League's Emerald Fortress, skipping meteors through space, with Wonder Woman explaining that the Amazons took away her title because Wonder Woman had not brought peace to the world of man, that she had looked for a peaceful solution too often. I always admired how gentle you were. Superman tells her, but Wonder Woman disagrees, believing that now is a time of strength, that they are the warriors who must wage combat against those who wished to do the world harm. Only the weak succumb to brutality, Superman says before he pushes away and flies off. In Luthor's factory, Shazam's eyes widen in horror as he watches a battle where the metahumans attack and kill a young Billy Batson. Those things never happened, he gasps, but Luthor is there whispering in his ear, reminding him that the superheroes are bad, that they are the cause of all of the world's problems. He reaches into a nearby vat, pulling out a tiny worm that he slips into Shazam's ear, smiling about how Dr. Savannah created these strange creatures to control people's minds. Do you suppose that when they coined the term mad scientist, they were thinking of him? Luthor asks, and Shazam tries to say his magical word as the worm crawls in, but Luthor stops him. No, there will be no retreat. Not yet. I still have a special job for you. Luthor whispers, unaware that a bat sits in the shadows watching him. Later, Batman and Luthor look down on the factory, marveling at how quickly Luthor's workers are building an army of Batbots. They head back into the command center with the others and take a seat at the table. Once war begins, Batman, can your players advance to the front lines if necessary? We'll be in place, Luthor. Obviously, we haven't the raw might to match Superman's army, but we have the fire of youth on our side, he says with a smile as he motions to the younger heroes behind him. The sons and daughters of many of the Leaguers have come to lend their support, he says, and as the meeting comes to an end, Batman slips over to a man in the corner, a man whose mind was broken long ago. Jean, can you verify? Jean, the Martian Manhunter, lowers his head as he tries, opening his mind once more, but there are too many voices, and Batman calms him. I want to matter. You don't think I can help. But Batman shakes his head, patting his friend on the shoulder. Jean, you have fought the good fight longer than any of us. You've done all that's ever been asked of you, and today was no exception. You paid your dues, old friend. Go home and rest. Dream of red sands and silent stars, Batman tells him. Meanwhile, Shazam moves through the crowd of young heroes, with everyone afraid of the powerful hero. His smile plastered onto his face as his eyes shift around the room. The world shifts again, folding in on itself, and Norman is once again looking at the Justice League in their Emerald Tower. Superman stares out the window, confirming that different parts of the world are safe, but someone sees Norman. It is said that the Flash is too fast to be contained in one plane of existence, that the speedster shifts his gaze and reaches out for Norman in a blink of the eye. He grabs him, ripping him into the proper existence. Power Girl is there in an instant, grabbing a hold of Norman. Who are you? Where did you come from? And why are you here? She shouts, but Superman stays her hand and stands before Norman as the pastor picks himself up. Well, the Man of Steel asks. Norman looks around at those that have gathered, and he doesn't know what to say, but he begins to spout scripture, trying to warn them of the coming end. Superman holds out a hand, trying to calm the elderly man. Armageddon is hardly on our calendar. These are grim days, but we have the matter fully. He begins to say it, but Grayson interrupts him as the computers begin to chime a warning. Holy God! Word just came in from the Gulag. There's a riot going on. The prisoners are going berserk. Wonder Woman doesn't hesitate, beginning to order the League into combat roles, telling them to head to the Gulag. Superman tries to add in warnings of going too far, but no one is listening to him anymore. You are finished, Spectre says as he pulls Norman away. Superman and Wonder Woman head to the UN to speak with them as the rest of the League head to Kansas to quell the riot. But the leaders of the UN aren't interested in what Superman has to say. They know that there is danger with the League's hidden prison on the US soil, and they're prepared to handle it if the League can't. Disappointed in the UN's beliefs, the two heroes leave. Stop looking so stunned. Do you honestly believe that they were going to sit back and let us solve the problem at our leisure? Wonder Woman asks him. As far as I'm concerned, if the situation with the Gulag gets 1 micron worse, the League will be forced to take action. But over in his boardroom, Luthor believes that now is the final act, and he turns to Shazam, putting a hand to the man's face, telling him that he must head to the Gulag and blow it open. Release the metahumans into the world to start the final war. Tumble down the walls of Jericho. I insist, he says with a sneer. But Batman is there, punching Shazam across the face, stepping on his throat. Hello, Billy. And everyone looks at the group in surprise. You're kidding me! All this time we've been in mortal fear of Billy Batson? Oliver shouts in surprise, and Batman nods, telling his team that he suspected it for some time, but had it confirmed with Jean's help. He had to take the wild card off the table before his team could act. He looks at his team of heroes and orders them to strike, the young heroes launching into combat, taking down the group of older villains in seconds. As Batman reaches for the trank gun to stop Billy Batson, Luthor rushes out of the room, but it distracts him for the moment needed, and Billy pushes him off, rushing into the factory. Luthor is easily stopped as Ted Kord activates the Batbots, but Batman loses Billy in the shadows of the factory. Bruce calls out to him, understanding that Shazam saw the way the world was going and retreated into Billy Batson, promising never to return. But Luthor took advantage of that. Billy rounds a corner, running into a vat of worms. He then falls to the ground as the small creatures crawl all over him. Billy screams in fear as Bruce rushes over. Billy, no, stay calm. I can help. Stay calm. But Billy can't help himself. He does what he always does when he's afraid. Shazam! He shouts, lightning crashing through the building, and Bruce is thrown away as his team moves in. Shazam is no longer the wild card, though he's still Luthor's thrall. God help us. Batman says as he orders his wizard to take him to the Batcave. In the League's fortress, Alan Scott calls them, telling them that the prisoners have almost all escaped. They've killed Captain Comet, he tells them, and Wonder Woman pauses for only a moment before lashing out in anger, breaking through the table. Superman is stunned as Wonder Woman orders the rest of the League to prepare for the final war. And what if they refuse to surrender? We can't have a war without people dying. She stares at him for simply a moment before reaching out, kissing him. A final kiss of farewell. And with that, the rest of the League turn to leave, leaving Superman all alone once more. But he doesn't stay. He speeds across the world in seconds, flying up through the floor of the Batcave to find Batman preparing his armor. I need your help. We've already been through this, Batman tells him, but Superman knocks the screwdriver out of his hands, explaining to Bruce that they need to stop Wonder Woman from starting a war. You mean to tell me that you never imagined it would come to this? Bruce asks him, pointing out that war might be the best ending, but Superman refuses to believe that with all of their differences, they've always agreed against killing. Tell me. I'll help you, Superman pleads, and Batman turns back to his armor. I'll tell you this one thing. There's a player that you haven't counted on. Shazam. He explains to Superman that Shazam's been brainwashed by Lex Luthor and that he's heading to the Gulag to blow it up. Superman doesn't hesitate. He speeds away. The Spectre opens Norman's vision so that he can see everything at once. He watches as the League gives the prisoners one final chance to surrender. He watches as Superman flies across the planet at a speed that actually scorches air. He watches as a bolt of lightning rips through the air and cracks open the Gulag. But Superman is the final hope. Norman watches as the red blur knocks him out of the sky. He looks up as the lightning cracks in the distance, and Shazam is standing before him, a smile on his face. Armageddon has arrived. The war begins, heroes fighting heroes, and Norman can do nothing but watch. He begs the Spectre to step in, but the Dark Angel shakes his head. I cannot take action, not yet. There will be a reckoning, Norman McKay. Be prepared. Superman catches another of Shazam's blows, staying with him for a moment. Damn it, Shazam! Snap out of it! You've done this. We have to work together. Superman tries to tell him, but Shazam breaks free, punching him across the battlefield. Over at the UN, the leaders of the world can see what is about to happen. A strike is ordered. The metahumans must be stopped. But over at the battle, it continues to rage on as Norman is watching as the heroes continue to fight each other. But he turns as Batman arrives, leading his host of heroes. The younger heroes rush in first, trying to stop the loss of life. But more fighting won't calm the situation. Batman moves quickly, his armor saving him from a fiery blast, and he turns to see a young Zatara falling to the ground. The hero known as Von Bach is about to smash him, but as a blade goes through Von Bach's chest, the large hero falls. Diana! Batman gasps, the warrior pulling her blade free. He left me no choice. They began this. I will finish this, she snaps, the rest of the prisoners turning on them, launching attacks against Wonder Woman, Batman falling to her back, covering his old friend, though she orders him to leave. Why? Because we're here to save lives rather than take them? He asks, and they both fight off the prisoners. I've heard rumors. You won't win back your royal station by overcompensating, Batman tells her, and Wonder Woman bellows in rage, turning on him, slicing at him with her sword. She grabs him by his armor, flying up into the sky, refusing to be judged by Batman. As they fly through the clouds, she continues to shout at him. We tried to hold order, but it's gone on too far. Our only option now is war, she shouts at him. But Batman isn't listening anymore. He turns his gaze to the 3 drones coming at him, armed with 3 nuclear missiles. Below them, Superman is still fighting. He hits Shazam with a blast of heat vision, still trying to talk some sense into the young hero. Damn it! Say something for yourself! Shazam looks at the Man of Steel, and he sure says something. Shazam! He shouts, and he moves towards Superman, letting the magic bolt hit the Man of Steel and drop him to the ground. And he smiles, speaking again. Shazam! The bolts crash again, and Shazam again says, Shazam! The bolts come down over and over, each one crashing into Superman, the magic wounding him until he falls. Above them, Batman and Wonder Woman put aside their differences, turning to fight against the coming end. But they only manage to take out 2 of the drones, and Norman is forced to watch as the nuclear bomb drops. Below, Shazam is still saying the word, but Superman uses the last of his strength to move forward. Lightning crashes and Billy Batson appears, with Superman's hand gripping around his face, his grip squeezing enough to make Billy whimper. Even wounded, Superman can hear the sound of the bombs falling. It is time, Spectre says as he turns his gaze to Norman. Judgment has come, Norman McKay. Our entire journey has brought us to this moment, the Angel says, growing in size. But the bomb! Norman gasps, and the Spectre explains that the bomb will decide the fate of the world. If it is allowed to fall, the metahumans will die, but mankind will be spared their violence. If they are allowed to live, their fight will live on and swallow the world. Whose sin is this? The humans or the superhumans? Tell me, Norman. Judge! The Spectre commands, but Norman doesn't know. He doesn't see the evil in this situation, just chaos and tragedy. He turns his gaze back to Superman and Shazam. I don't know what to do. You can see that, can't you? Every choice that I've made so far has brought us here, so listen to me, Billy. Superman says, motioning to the war around them, telling Billy that either the bomb will kill them all or the heroes will run rampant around the world. I can stop the bomb, Billy. That much I'm sure of. What I don't know is whether I should. I cannot make that decision, Billy, for I am not a man. But you, Billy, you're both. Billy closes his eyes and tears roll down his cheek as Superman tells him to decide the fate of the world. He releases Billy and leaps into the air, flying fast for the bomb. Billy looks up and whispers the magic word. Shazam! He's behind Superman in an instant, grabbing the Man of Steel's foot, throwing him back to the earth. Superman watches as he keeps going, and Shazam grabs a hold of the bomb. Shazam! 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 Billy begins to bellow, lightning striking over and over, and the bomb, it detonates! Smoke and dust swirling around them. And Norman looks up. Judgment, Spectre says, pointing through the smoke to the Man of Steel, who bellows with rage and loss. The bones of the superhuman scattered around him, his eyes glowing red with rage as he leaps into the air. Where? Norman asks, and the Spectre tells him that Superman is surely going for the UN to punish those that he deems responsible. The Spectre points to some of the heroes who survived, protected by the likes of the lanterns, and he finally turns away, bidding Norman farewell. Norman is shocked, stepping before the Spectre. You want to control evil? Then get us to the UN. You saw Superman. You saw the anger that could twist steel. If what happens next happens the only way it can and you let it, That's evil, Spectre. Within moments, they are at the UN building watching as Superman begins to crush the building. He brings it down on everyone that he has locked inside. But Norman believes that he can speak to the hero, and Spectre nods and allows it. Clark, Norman says softly, and he pauses briefly at the sound of that name. Clark, don't. You blame yourself for everything that has happened, that ended with today. Yes, you're angry. But in that anger, you're forgetting once more what humans fear. They won't forgive you for this, Clark. Forgive yourself. Superman closes his eyes, releasing the building, and he turns to Norman, asking, "Who are you?" But they're interrupted as the survivors arrive at the UN. Superman is shocked to see them. How many? He asks Batman. Enough to leave us with the same problems as before. But Superman shakes his head, telling him that they will put things right, that they will once again work alongside humanity to help create a better world. Instead of acting as the gods above them, I will earn your trust and use the wisdom one man left as his legacy, Superman says as Wonder Woman hands him Shazam's cape. Norman and Spectre watch before turning away and disappearing. Time moves and folds again, and Norman watches as the world rebuilds. Batman uses his resources to build a hospital to help those affected by the crisis. Wonder Woman returns to Paradise Island, where it's decided that she has changed the world for the better, and she is reinstated as the Queen. Alan Scott joins the UN, working alongside the country of humanity instead of sitting in the fortress high above them. And Superman returns to Kansas, where he buries the dead and he begins to reseed the earth. He's joined by Wonder Woman one day, who offers him the gift of glasses, so he could see the world as the human that he once was. She kisses him again, but this time out of love, and she leaves him to his work. A year passes, and Clark, Diana, and Bruce all meet at Planet Krypton, the trio enjoying lunch as they discuss the differences in the world that they have made in the last year. But Clark and Diana try to surprise Bruce. "You're pregnant," he says simply as he cuts into his steak. They shouldn't be surprised that he already knew, but Diana does surprise him by asking him to be the godfather. "News to you, I take it?" Bruce asks as he sees Clark's shocked expression, but Bruce points out that he hasn't had the best track record as a father. Clark stands reminding Bruce that even with all of their differences, he has always trusted him as a moral man, and that has never changed. The two old friends embrace, and after finishing their meals, they all get up to go. But Bruce notices two men sitting at the bar. "Spinach and cottage cheese. That's the Spectre platter?" Jim Corrigan asks Norman, the elderly pastor smiling. "Look at it this way. It's flattering to just be remembered somehow." Bruce shakes his head as the trio head towards the exit. A child of Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. Imagine what kind of a kid he'll be. Bruce says in awe, and the friends smile and laugh. "Let's head home, and we'll dream about the future," Clark tells them.
And there you have it. That was Kingdom Come. What did you guys think of this story? Do you agree that it deserves the title of Best Comic Book? If not, what story would you give that title to? Let us know in the comments down below. And of course, like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.